For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind. By the might of his inexhaustible armies, 1,000,000 worlds stand against the dark. Yet he is a rotting carcass, the carrion lord of the Imperium, held in life by marvels from the dark age of technology, and the 1,000 souls sacrificed each day so he may continue to burn. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. It is to suffer an eternity of carnage and slaughter. It is to have the cries of anguish and sorrow drowned by the thirsting laughter of dark gods. This is a dark and terrible era where you find little comfort or hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace amongst the stars, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Hi, we're Mediocre Rumble Brothers. Welcome to From Start to Credits on Space Marine 2. And that was a passage out of my Wrath and Glory rulebook for the RPG tabletop of Warhammer 40,000. I am Udon, your host, and I am joined here by Corey and Edwin. If you can tell how I've opened this, I am a giant fan of Warhammer 40,000, yet I've only been into it for about a year. But here on From Start to Credits, we're talking about video games. So we're talking about Space Marine 2, which came out actually roughly a year ago. We almost hit the mark on the anniversary. Actually, we're only a couple weeks off. But yes, so talking about Warhammer today. This is going to be a bit of a weird one because this game is relatively short. Has a lot of good gameplay in it. The game is fantastic in my opinion. But the thing is that like unlike something like Zelda or something like that, who has a much longer story like dungeons and stuff, this game has a kind of a compact sandbox, like action sandbox, and it's just the gameplay loop is really good. But we're going to get into all that later. I imagine this is going to be more about me answering the questions of these two who have a very vague knowledge of Warhammer 40,000, but we'll get into that. As I do open most of these, we're going to go ahead and give me your experience with not only Space Marine the game, because this is a sequel to a game that came out almost 12 years ago on the Xbox 360, but your impressions and thoughts and knowledge of Warhammer 40,000 in general. So, Corey, Edwin, whoever wants to go first.
I have been familiar with Warhammer 40k for a long time, actually, but not like deep in the lore of it. I just kind of understand that, like the tabletop aspect of it. I had a kit a long time ago and I was like, God, I have to paint this shit. Like I didn't really know like that it was that involved and stuff. Cause I like board games and tabletops with the miniatures and stuff. And so I kind of naturally gravitate towards that wall that's dedicated to this shit in a lot of the comic book shops. And it's like, they look so cool. And you see pictures of all the cool painted ones. And I had a friend at work, like one of my first jobs, who he had a whole Arctic army that he showed me once where he painted it. He used cotton balls to like puff up to make fur like trims on the jackets and stuff. And it was so awesome. And that's kind of how I got introduced into the tabletop version. But then I started playing other Warhammer products like Vermintide, which is not 40k, but Chaos Bane, a lot of the older ones that are like the original Warhammer stuff. But then Space Marine, I've always liked the characters. I watched the fan made short on YouTube a bunch of times. I've seen the Secret Level episode, which that's moderately newer, I guess, content. But I never played Space Marine the first one, but I was aware of the game, and I've always thought that like this world building and stuff was really cool. And so when you, Udon, actually got me Space Marine last time you came to visit me, we finally had sat down and played through it, and I had a fucking blast. It's such a cool game for such a cool franchise that should get. It makes a lot of sense of why there's so much stuff revolving around the Warhammer franchise, not just 40k, but all of it. There's RTS games, dungeon crawlers, shooters. It's just so much awesome stuff to kind of just get involved with. So like I'm a fan of the series, and it's nice to interact with anything that usually has the Warhammer name.
We have like a lot of knowledge of Warhammer 40k. I did see the same fan animation that Corey is talking about. It's probably the most popular one. And I've also only played Vermintide. That's like the only exposure that I had to it. I've seen like the Space Marines before, and I knew that it was mainly a tabletop game or RTS. But the fact that like I mainly seen a complicated like video of what the tabletop game is, and I don't really like RTSs. I didn't really like dig much into it. I just thought the Space Marines were cool, but it's like now that I actually have like exposure to it, it's just like a Doom level hardcoreness of Gears of War.
I had a very similar story just a little more than a year ago. So I didn't know anything about Warhammer 40,000 until Space Marine 1 came out. And even before then, I might have had a vague idea of what it was because my friends Tim and Blake were kind of into them. And Space Marine came out on the Xbox 360 and I played it and I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking cool. I love giant dudes, and armor is such a weakness for me in terms of character design. And honestly, Space Marines and all their variants are like the peakest of peak of like super sci-fi armor, in my opinion. It is basically the whole aesthetic, except for kind of like the gothic ships. I'm kind of meh on those, but when it comes to like armor and weapons and vehicles for 40,000, I love them. But I was appreciating it from a distance. Tim and Blake and all my other friends were reading the books, getting way into the lore and stuff, but I was just keeping my distance. I'm just like, yeah, I like the designs, but I'm not going to read the books or whatever. I did eventually try and read books, but when you're jumping into a franchise this old and this deep and this intricate with lore, jumping in the middle, you'll have a decent time, but you're not going to understand a whole lot of shit that's going on, which I also feel like is not necessarily a problem, but is a lot of people's experience playing this game. So when Space Marine 2 came out, I already knew I was going to play it. I'm like, yeah, Space Marines, woohoo. And it comes out, I play it, have a blast with it. I adore this game. I fucking love it. I can pull it up on my Xbox, how many hours I have into it. It's probably easily over 100 or 200 hours at this point. But it also kind of made me think, I was like, you know what? I do like this campaign, but I just don't know what the fuck is going on. And because I don't know anything else about this game other than I understand what Space Marines are, I understand their psychology, I understand the chapters and whatnot, like very broad terms. But I'm like, I'm going to get into the lore. So I went on a crusade. That's kind of a pun if Warhammer. To basically, I started reading the Horus Heresy series, which I know for the learned out there isn't technically Warhammer 40,000, it's Warhammer 30,000. But nonetheless, I was reading basically where the lore story of Warhammer 40,000 came from, and I've been reading them all year. I'm still not done, but I'm getting there. But I've jumped into the rabbit hole, and I'm much more learned on how this world works. And I just appreciate it so much more. And it's so much fun and exciting because this is a game series that the tabletop dates back to 1987. So there is just so much stuff to get into. I mainly like the video games. I have not touched any of the miniatures. I have no interest in the tabletop. I just don't have the time. I have been tempted to buy miniatures simply just to paint them and make them look cool and put them about my house, not to actually use them. But it's mainly like the lore and storybooks and the video games that I get a lot of love from, or I gain my appreciation of the series from. So this is the game that really like popped the proverbial cherry in terms of like just jumping headfirst in this endless rabbit hole of Warhammer 40,000 stuff. And it is easily turned into one of my favorite sci-fi franchises of all time. Good palate cleanser if you just want something. Obviously, the setting is grim dark. It is just the setting's fucked. Everything's horrible, but you just want some really serious, really gory, just fucked up stories. It's awesome. But in settings like that, in the settings like that, though, when the human spirit does triumph, it means it's all the more special and cool. That being said, the game itself, I'm going to try my absolute best not to turn this into a total lore fest. But I also feel that a lot of people who've played this game has a lot of similar experiences that I did when I first played it. Because I've seen not only from these two playing it, but a lot of VTubers and other people I watch who play it. It's like they get into it, they understand what a Space Marine is, and they understand you say for the Emperor, but it doesn't really go much deeper than that. It's like they don't know. They don't understand what chaos is. They don't understand what Tyranids are or what's happening. It's like it's space. Those are the aliens. You shoot them, and that's fine. You can. This setting is totally able to be enjoyed that way. I'm not saying that's particularly wrong. I just feel when people are more interested in it, and you actually start biting into the lore and getting more knowledgeable about it, you appreciate it all the more. Because now that I replayed it with all my knowledge I've obtained, I was like, oh, this is way deeper and way more well crafted than I thought it was. So, that being said, I'm going to recap the story, not level by level. I'm basically going to read the story. What I want you two to do, and I don't, when I'm reading the story, I'll stop occasionally and ask you two for questions. Please ask me the things that you literally are just like, what's that? What's that? What's that? And I'm going to give you like a Spark Notes version, just to kind of, it'll be a little bit of a Warhammer history lesson almost to give you context. Because when I was hearing you guys playing, I understand you guys are paying attention, but I know a lot of the terms and like things that they're throwing around just going over everyone's heads, because unless you don't know. I mean, is that how you felt playing through the story of this? That is more, it was much more superficial. Like, yes, this is fun. I'm having fun. The game is good and everything's cool looking. Everything's blowing up. I love the blood everywhere. But God damn it, I have no idea what's going on.
Kind of. I mean, everything was like, as you said, it was like heavy military and gothic. I thought that was like really, really interesting and creative like combination. But it's like but because it's like two very different things and the way they combine them, a lot of things just seem unethical and confusing. So I was like, I definitely had a lot of questions when I first started playing. Also, it's like they're like heavy military. So in your opening speech, it sounded like you said the emperor is dead on a throne, but his wisdom and his loyalty still stand with him. Is that what you said?
So here you're already asking the hard questions.
Yeah.
To reduce that down. Oh crap, Christ, where do you start with this? Back in the Horus Heresy, the emperor made 20 sons. These are called the Primarchs of the original 20 legions of Space Marines. 2 of them we don't talk about, so there's really 18 of them. One of them was called Horus. He had a little fucky wucky one day with some warp shit. I am skipping so much garbage, but I'm trying to just give you as much context as it takes to maybe entice your interest to look into it further. He leads a rebellion called the Horus Heresy. He fights the Emperor. The Emperor does win, but he wounds him very, very badly to the point where no one can heal him. So they installed the Emperor on the Golden Throne, which is basically this giant psychic chair because the Emperor is super psychically gifted. He is basically a god. The thing is, though, it's basically the life support chair. They're not even, because he does not respond. He only responds very rarely and only to certain people and in the most fragmented, like, I'm an oracle in the old Greek days, ways of interpreting the language of God sort of way. And the people, the Chaos Legions, pretty sure he's dead, that he's just down the throne. They sacrifice 1,000 psychers a day to basically feed him their essence in order to keep him what they believe is alive. So the Emperor, no, he is not going around walking and talking. He is like an immobile, non-talking, unspeaking entity that does show some signs of being alive, because the people who are super believing in him can invoke some kind of like religious psyker powers that are coming from their belief in him as a god. But it's a very hard question to answer. Basically, the Chaos Legions will tell you it's a corpse emperor. You're worshiping a corpse. But everyone else in the Imperium's like, no, he's totally alive. We're just keeping him alive. That's the quote unquote short answer.
No, that actually makes sense. That it is intriguing.
What about you, Corey? Is my synopsis correct? Is that how you felt playing this game in terms of the story?
Yeah, there is, to quote Fry, this is a cool way to die. Like, there's a lot going on, and because I didn't play the first one, that I'm not really attached to this character that I'm assuming is in the first one.
Yeah, it's our fault.
There's just so much lore stuff. But I mean, it's not that it's impossible to kind of get into like what you're doing. Everything kind of is straightforward and makes a lot of sense as far as like, this is my team. We are following our orders, blow up shit, shoot those bad guys. Like, if you simplify it to that aspect, like what I'm doing, I have no idea. I just know that there's a lot of shit going on in the background, and it is just so. I think when we were playing it, every time we got into some new shit, I would be like, holy crap, that's awesome. So it was kind of just a visual spectacle of chaos, and no pun intended, I guess. The color schemes, everything was just so like, there's just so much stuff happening that I can't even focus on what people are even telling me in the game. I'm just like looking at all this shit. You have banter between like your team, but I'm fighting like 100 things at once. So it's like, I don't know what you're telling me right now. I'm just kind of killing shit. So yeah, I couldn't tell you what the story is really, but I had a lot of fun anyways.
And I think that is a perfectly fine way to experience 40k if all you like is the aesthetics. I don't feel like the lore needs to be bitten into unless you want to, but I like stories, so I took the plunge finally. It only took me 12 years. But yeah, that's what I want to clear up today for you and anyone else who is interested in the game. I'm going to try and give you as much context as possible, tell you what the story in general was, link it back to the first game in the few ways that it matters, and basically hoping to give you enough to bite into that you're interested in seeing the rest of it and maybe looking into it yourselves, because I feel like it's a very rich sort. If you already like Space Marines and shit, how everything looks, you're already preset to enjoy the deeper lore of everything and really getting to know characters and setting and whatnot. And with that spiel, I think I don't have to ask the question of how the game looks. The game looks fantastic. The art style is fantastic. Warhammer 40,000 has always been really cool in its aesthetics of the Gothic architecture and just the round, big shoulder pads, big fucking Space Marines. Everything's big, bigger guns. But anyways, we will talk about the gameplay. Don't you worry about that, people at home. It's just that I feel talking about the gameplay is going to take all about 20 minutes because, as I said earlier, it is a very compact sandbox and it's just the same game loop over and over and over again, but it's really, really fun, so you don't care. That being said, I will now give you the relevant plot you need from Space Marine 1, and we'll go ahead and jump into this because this might take a while, might take not a whole lot of time. But remember what I said. I'm going to stop at certain points and try and remember what I'm telling you. Feel free to ask any questions you want, and I'm going to try and give you the Spark Notes version of the answer to help you understand what actually you did throughout the entire game. So anyways, Space Marine 1. Yes, as Corey said, you play as the same character in Space Marine 2 as you did in 1. This is Captain Titus, or Lieutenant Titus as he is in Space Marine 2. Space Marine 1, he was the captain of the second chapter of the Ultramarines chapter of Space Marines. Basically, there was an orc invasion of a planet called Gaia. They were trying to get weapons from them. It was a forge world, so the whole planet's whole occupation is making weaponry. The orcs wanted the weaponry, but they found this really special weapon that basically, it was a power source that could power this psychic relay that could lock onto a whole species warp signature and just erase species from the galaxy. And they were recruited by the Inquisition from the Imperium to help secure it. Basically, at some point, Titus ends up manhandling the power source, but because the power source is warp powered, like no one should be able to touch it. If you touch it, you should be dead, and Titus lives, which makes him very suspicious. At the end of the day, Titus and his boys save the day. However, one of his squad mates takes a really big issue with the fact that Titus kept going against basically what is called the Codex Astartes, which is almost a rule book for Space Marines that chapter by chapter chooses whether or not they follow it. And was not cool about that, so basically told on him to the Inquisition, which led to Titus being abducted by the Inquisition and essentially tortured for a century, getting put through hundreds and hundreds of tests trying to prove that he was warp tainted, but he just wasn't. Every test he passed. Eventually, the guy who was in charge of him died, and because they didn't want to pass him off to anyone else, he's like, all right, you're good enough. Get out of here. Go join the Death Watch. So finally, he's let to join the Death Watch, and that is essentially where we find him at the beginning of this game. So, starting in Space Marine 2. A squad of Death Marines were sent to the planet Kadaku to detonate a virus bomb to prevent a Tyranid invasion. All of the squad is lost aside from the leader, which is the player who you're playing as, who after fighting the Tyranids does deploy the bomb. During the fighting, the player is revealed to be Titus, the playable character from the first game. He is mortally wounded fighting a Carnifex, but is saved by the Ultramarines, which, as I said, the Ultramarines were his original chapter. Titus is awoken by the chaplain of the Ultramarines, and is informed that Chapter Master Calgar has authorized a surgery that will turn him into a Primaris Marine. Titus is then reinstated into the Ultramarines, but is told he has a long way to go to prove to his brothers that he is truly not tainted by the warp. Titus reports to Captain Acheron, Captain Acheron is now the current captain of the second company, so he is in what Titus's previous position was, and given the command of a fire team as a second lieutenant, and is joined by his brothers Gradriel and Chiron. Now I'll stop there. Any questions so far? Yes.
Really?
No.
None on my end.
Not really.
Really?
I'm just surprised that is like that he was tortured for a whole fucking century.
He was. The Inquisition is very thorough, though I'm actually kind of shocked you don't have any questions for all those fucking terms I just threw out there.
Oh, I guess I think you already explained it before. The Death Watch is like it basically like a Suicide Squad type of situation. Is that correct for like the people that were committed to heresy or something like that?
Yes and no. Kind of, sort of. Titus is a little bit of a special case. The Death Watch is actually still technically a chapter of Space Marines, but their whole purpose is to deal with Xenos, which aliens. They are specially equipped to deal with Xenos, but what makes them special is that every chapter of Space Marines is required to send a tithe of their own Space Marines to the Death Watch. The Death Watch is actually made out of many chapters of different kinds of Space Marines that are all specifically equipped to deal with the Xenos creatures, which is why they're being sent to take care of the Tyranids. Obviously, they fall under that banner.
So
They're not
basically a soldier tax.
Yes, kind of, because the Xenos are one of the biggest. They're the biggest threat next to the Chaos for the Imperium, and which is why, again, they don't bring light to this. But if you do pay attention to the characters that you're with at the beginning of the game, one of them is a Space Wolf. I don't know if you actually see the chapter icons for the other Space Marines, but one of them is 100% a Space Wolf. And Titus just happened to be like a permanent fixture there because he was renounced by his previous chapter. So they're not supposed to die, but they are sent on very difficult missions. It's more like they're just specialist alien hunters, essentially, instead of like some sort of Suicide Squad. All right. I mean, I guess if you don't have any questions, we'll keep going. So the Tyranids are attacking two planets, Kodaku and Avarex. The Ultramarines are focused on saving Avarex as it is a hive planet, and Titus is sent to recapture anti-air defenses, which will allow them to send more troops to Avarex. Titus is also sent to retrieve Arch-Magos Nozick, as he is an important asset. Titus is successful, but the Magos as the Magos is being evacuated, his Thunderhawk is shot down. Titus and the fire team go after it and find the crash site to be littered with markings of chaos and all aboard the ship to be killed. However, an important artifact the Magos was transporting is left behind, and Titus retrieves it. Titus tries to report the strange attack, but the Mechanicus wrote the whole thing off as being engine failure. Now, with Magos Nozick dead, his next in line, Magos Leuz, is the one to take over his secret Project Aurora. Now, this Project Aurora is the entire reason why the Ultramarines are so invested in this planet, because typically speaking, when Tyranids invade, it is incredibly difficult to get them off of whatever they're doing, so people will just blow up the planet and move on. But we're not blowing up the planet this time because there's important shit here. Titus and his team are sent to retrieve the Magos after the chaplain interrogates Titus about Titus having a strange PTSD-like episode that he had back at the crash site when he saw all the chaos markings and whatnot. Titus and his team go to a Mechanicus facility to try and pinpoint where Leuz is and learn more about Project Aurora. Project Aurora is an attempt by the Mechanicus to recreate the warp power source that Titus dealt with and manhandled in the first game, but it was destroyed. So basically, to put it this way, why Titus is so invested, he did destroy that power source in the first game that he wasn't supposed to be able to touch, but now they are actually trying to recreate that same power source now. So it's like this thing coming back to haunt him. Any more questions?
The Mechanicus, right? That's what it is?
Yes, the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Is that the dude in the red?
Yes, the Mechanicus priests are the guys you see walking around that have a lot of like robot limbs coming out of them. They are the denizens of Mars, is where they were based out of, and they're all about and I know you've probably heard it in the game, but when someone says for the Emperor, they say for the Omnissiah. They are talking about the same person, because when the Emperor visited Mars and basically showed them his godlike power, they thought he was the Omnissiah because they worship the machine god, which they believe the Emperor to be. Back in this, this is especially relevant back in 30k, before everything turned super religious. No one was allowed any kind of religion except for the Mechanicus, because they created all the armor, all the weapons, all the vehicles, all the technology that the Imperium uses comes from the Mechanicus. But yes, you see a dude in a red robe with a bunch of robot shit coming off him, he's more than likely part of the Adeptus Mechanicus.
And so that's the person that you end up talking to on the, I don't know if it's the same person, but you have to interact with one of those dudes who's sitting in front of like all the TVs and shit on your giant ship.
Yep.
Just a bigger douchebag.
Just another douche. Yeah.
They do think that they do. A lot of the Mechanicus guys think themselves self-important because unless you are a tech marine, no one else is allowed to basically understand how the Imperium's technology works. It is like religiously guarded by them. Because occasionally Space Marine chapters will send Marines to train at Mars under the Mechanicus, and they become what is known as Tech Marines. So they do have knowledge of it. But other than that, you are completely reliant on the Mechanicus to basically repair, refit, and outfit you with all your armor, weapons, ammunition, what have you. So
I do have a question. They have a floating skull next to them that like was like a bunch of wires and technology on it. What is that exactly? Because I just always kept looking at it. I thought it was just like an assistant of some kind.
So not only does the Imperium have a lot of like skull iconography everywhere, just in general, because death and honor, all that stuff. That's just called a servo skull. It's I believe it's religious significance that they specifically use human skulls to do that, because in certain ways sometimes, because obviously Space Marines live for hundreds and hundreds of years, human lifespans are still, if you live to old age, you'll probably die around your 80s or 100 if you even get that far in this kind of universe. But sometimes if you serve a chapter, even if you're not a Space Marine, because obviously Space Marines need help from mortals that aren't them, if you die, they might take your skull and implant a bunch of technology in it. So in a way, you're still serving the chapter even after death, because sometimes people see that as like an honor. Basically, the skull itself isn't really nothing more than decoration. It's a skull basically crammed with a bunch of technology. So it can do all. Servo skulls can usually do a bunch of things. They can either scan stuff, open doors, interact with shit. They're basically just little floating robots essentially that can do just a whole myriad of things depending on what servo skull and what purpose it was made for.
So he's just like walking around with his friend Marty, like tethered to his shoulder.
No, that's unironically what some people do. If there's a Space Marine that grows particularly fond of a certain mortal serf or some kind of other crew member of their chapter, and they end up dying, they may take their skull and turn it into a servo skull and like make it a personal assistant.
You're cool. I'll keep you around.
I was just thinking it's a ghost from Destiny just following you around.
It's not that, because like there's a thing about there's no true AI in the Imperium. There might be like very, very limited like servitors that have like very limited responses, but no true like self-learning AI, because AIs are taboo, and that's what caused the first dark age of technology. So anytime you hear something talking, it's like a rudimentary robot or something like that. They don't really have personality per se, even if they can speak.
It's funny that was your question and not the like weird ass mechanical cherub things that are just everywhere.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
So almost the same thing. They're basically vat-grown servitors, and servitors used to be basically war criminals or like murderers, rapists, what have you. And that basically they took, it's like, oh, you got accused of a really horrible crime, so we're going to take you, we're going to lobotomize you, maybe cut your hands off or your legs off, and either sew you into a piece of machinery and hook your brain up to be permanently basically an organic computer, essentially. But when they ran out of criminals, they just started growing basically like subhumans, and those cherubs are basically them, and they have the little wings for looks. Basically, again, it's this whole religious thing. They're supposed to look like little angels, but they essentially almost fill the same role as a servo skull, but with a bit more like capacity for like tools and stuff, because they actually have like a whole body rather than just a floating skull. But they're basically just for looks and like little assistants essentially.
Jesus Christ.
It's kind of funny. I remember when I was walking to the mission and I saw like a janitor sweeping, and I was like, look at me. I'm a freaking Space Marine. Like, I'm a tank walking around. This guy's pushing a broom in the Imperium. Like, imagine just being that far in the future, and you're still just like, you guys couldn't have got a Roomba or something? Like, I got to clean this shit.
Like, they still do stuff like that, because I know you guys didn't get a chance to play Operations mode, which is kind of a shame, because honestly, basically you get the other half of the story from playing other Operations mode. But there's a track you have to go to where you have to load this giant missile onto a train, and instead of the missile just being carried there or like on a track or something, they basically have hundreds of servitor creatures pulling it with chains, a la like old Egyptian slaves as they were building the pyramid style, because that's just what we do here.
You guys like, you Space Marines could pick this up. Like, no.
It's literally that. It's like, no, we're too important. We're out there killing shit. You can pick this up, so you're going to do that.
Yeah, you carry that. I'll carry the Imperium.
It's like, I could, but I'm too good for it.
No, that is literally it. It's like I'm a space marine. Because when space marines do not view themselves, at least in a large part, as humans. They are above humanity because they have ascended. Essentially, like they are so far removed from humanity that yes, they fight for humans, and they do acknowledge that yes, they are technically human. They're proto humans. They are above them. So their whole purpose is to carry on against all these enemies of the Imperium, while all the mortals of the Imperium can do all the backbreaking labor, because that's what they can do, while the Space Marines can fight. So that's what they do. Anyways, so we learned about Project Aurora and how it ties back to Titus. Yeah, so we learned that Titus has a big chip on his shoulder with this thing they're trying to recreate, which basically is what got him into 100 years of torture in the first place. The squad mate Gadriel grows more suspicious of Titus the more he learns about him, and the more Titus tries to hide his past. Now, he gets questioned a lot through the story, and Titus does not answer them because despite Space Marines having a resistance to interrogation and torture, being tortured for 100 years by basically your own side will change you somehow. And so basically, while Titus is concerned about all of this, he does not tell them anything because he doesn't want them to go tattling on him like his former squad mate did, which fucked him over in the end. So he's very tight-lipped about everything. So Titus tries to warn Captain Arcanon about the dangers the power source possesses, because in the first game, when it was misused, it started a warp incursion, which basically fucked over the entire planet. But he is basically ignored because it's deemed too valuable to destroy or not use. So Titus and his team are sent to retrieve Liuz now that they know his location. Fighting their way there, Titus and his team are joined by a veteran sergeant who is friends with Chiron. When they reach their destination, they are ambushed by Chaos cultists disguised as guardsmen. A bomb takes out the veteran sergeant. He's supposedly taken out, but a funny tidbit is that later you can overhear Mechanicus people talking about having a new potential candidate for a dreadnought insertion, so that guy who gets blown up by the bomb is presumed to be put into a dreadnought after that. He wasn't actually killed. The cultists manage to open portals, and Titus and the team is attacked by the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion of Chaos Space Marines. The fire team managed to rescue Liuz from the Thousand Suns attack. When Liuz comments on Titus sharing a name with someone who dealt with the original version of the power source on a planet called Garaya, Titus denies this, and Gadriel and Chiron are growing only deeper and deeper in their suspicion of him by his complete avoidance of their questions and denial that he has anything to do with it. And I already said that Titus refuses to elaborate because he doesn't want to be thrown in basically hell prison again. But yeah, well, again, we'll stop there. Any more questions? No, seriously? All that terminology, and you don't want to know any more about any of that?
Well, I do like the Chaos Marines, the ones that showed up. Their outfits and stuff are I think, what is it, Egyptian themed? Their armor looks pretty dope. And I remember you telling me something about how there's no one actually in the suit. So I just kind of thought they were a bunch of, I guess, corrupted Titus folks that are just piloting these robots that are pissed at the Imperium or something.
Yeah, so again, Spark Notes version. I said at the beginning of this that originally there were only 18, well, technically 20, but 18 legions of Space Marines that anyone gave a shit about. So now there's no more legions. There are only chapters. And basically what the difference is that legions used to consist of hundreds of thousands of Space Marines, where a chapter nowadays can only consist of 1,000 Space Marines. And the reason for this is that during the Horus Heresy, half of the chapters rebelled against the Imperium, and when you have numbers like that all turning at once, one chapter turning is not as bad as half the legions turning of hundreds of thousands, and we're getting into the millions of Space Marines turning against you, which is big bad. Now, the Thousand Suns are a bit more intricate, but I'm not about to go into a whole Thousand Suns lore discussion. But basically, yes, they were one of the traitor legions that got turned against the Imperium because the Imperium basically told them to go fuck themselves. And they are the most psychically gifted of all the traitor legions, which psychers in this setting just think space magic to just make it really simple. And they follow one of the chaos gods called Zeech. Zeech is basically the lord of the maker of ways. He's basically the chaos god of knowledge, essentially. He's the most esoteric and harder to understand of all the chaos gods, because you have Nurgle, who's basically the god of death and rot. You have Khorne, who's basically the god of blood and violence. You have Slanesh, who's basically the god of excess, and that can be interpreted in a lot of ways. Then you have Zeech, who's the god of intellect, and I'm probably going to be chastised because I feel like I'm forgetting someone, but oh well. They're not important. They're not in this game. Basically saying there's a lot of different kinds of enemies in the Warhammer setting, because like I said in the first game, you fight against orcs in that one and a little bit of chaos, but it's mostly orcs. There's no orcs in this one. We're fighting Tyranids and we're fighting Chaos Marines. and only one small sect of the potential different kinds of chaos demons and chaos legions that you could be fighting. And yes, the Thousand Sons have a Egyptian mechanic. And to answer your question for anyone out there, yes, if anyone out there doesn't understand, because I was also kind of surprised because I asked the same question and Tim and Blake gave me the answer because I started cutting into the Chaos Marines. I'm like, why are they bleeding like blue Kool-Aid instead of blood? Yes, the Thousand Sons basically fucked themselves over so bad with their psychic powers that they basically turned like 99% of their chapter into fucking dust. And they just continue. They're basically possessed armor most of the time, with very, very few individual exceptions. And that's basically why they're like that. And they just keep getting sent back to the warp and coming back and sent back to the warp and coming back every time they die. So you're cutting into dust. You are killing them, but you're more like just giving them a respawn timer than eliminating someone from the galaxy permanently.
So like that's the difference between the actual sorcerer and the Kool-Aid dust and armor. Is like the sorcerers are the ones who didn't fuck themselves over.
So some sorcerers are still the ones that fuck themselves over. But like I said, when I say 99%, that Imra dude that we're dealing with, yes, he is not dust. He is one of the very, very few individuals who is not a dust person. Now, the Thousand Sons' main goal in life is to find some way to revert that change. But since there's only like 0.1% of individuals left even capable of that, it's slow going. Also fucking over the Imperium when and where they can because Zeech told them to. But anyways, I guess moving on if we have no more questions. With Avarex under attack by the Thousand Sons and Tyranids, Captain Acheron insists on the usage of Project Aurora lest everything be lost. And remember what I said with that power source, Project Aurora's basically purpose is to lock on to a species warp signature and eliminate them. Basically just cause their heads to explode. So it's basically just like a make this thing and it's an I win button. Titus still cautions against this, but follows orders regardless. With the planet's astropath being psychically blocked by the Tyranids, Titus and his team form a plan to take out the Hive Tyrant who is causing the blockage. Now, an astropath, because even if you don't ask this, I feel like it's important. An astropath is basically a psyker who is used for either warp travel, which is their faster than light travel, or they can use to send psychic messages across space. This is how they tie the entire universe into like a conceivable, like travelable place is through these psychers. It's being blocked because they're trying to contact the rest of the Ultramarines, basically telling them, hey, Thousand Sons are here. We got chaos. Shit's fucked beyond all measurable signs of belief. We need help. So they need to take out this Hive Tyrant since, again, lore-wise, Tyranids are basically all psychic. Some are more psychic than others, but they're all held together by a psychic hive mind. And like the big hive mind, the Hive Tyrant is causing a blockage of communication with the Astronomicon and the Astropaths. So Titus sends a second squad. This is a squad you play as in the operations co-op mode of the game to kill the Tyrant while his team secure the Astropathic relay to inform Chapter Master Caligar of the situation. You don't actually fight the Hive Tyrant as Titus and his team. That is done in the operations mode, and it's a pretty fun boss fight.
I was disappointed when I found that. I was like, damn it, I didn't do any of that because I was looking at the walk. I was a little lost because I didn't get credit for the last mission, so I looked online for like the walkthrough of what it is that I missed, and apparently it kept saying there's like back and forth between the campaign and operations, and I was wondering what the operations was, and it's just like the other half of the campaign, which I thought was a weird way to do it.
Well, the difference is that like the operations is that's the mode I play all the time, and it's fun because number one, you can customize your Space Marines, so you can pick your own chapter. You don't have to be Ultramarines. You play as one of 6 or 7 classes that you can all level up and unlock perks and armor and all this shit. It's a PvE mode. You can replay the missions ad nauseum because each time the item layouts are different, the enemy layout is different, the boss layout is different. Like it changes every time you play it, so it's like a really good replayability factor. Yeah, it's unfortunate that a lot of it has like story context that fits together with the main story, which is a bit unfortunate. So if you wanted it technically in order, you have to flip-flop modes, but it's not the most important thing to do in the world. So yeah. During this, Gadriel puts together that parts of Titus's past, but Titus shelves the conversation for now, admitting that he became part of the Death Guard. Like he is the same Titus that was on that planet Garia a long time ago and fucked with this warp shit, but he went into the Death Guard. Titus and his team reach the Astropath, who starts sending a message to Caligar before she suddenly accuses Titus of being a traitor who only wants the power source for himself.
This causes Gadriel to attack Titus, but during the fight, Chiron shoots the astropath, where it is revealed she was possessed by Amura of the Thousand Suns. Amura escaped, and Gadriel and Titus reach somewhat of an understanding. The team returns to Captain Arcanon, who informs them that Magos Lezu, I keep having Lezu, I hate his fucking name, is on the planet Demirium working on Aurora and is under attack by the Thousand Suns. At this point, the others start to take what Titus has to say about the danger of the power source seriously. Titus and his team are sent to secure the power source to prevent another chaos incursion. Yeah, any questions about any of that? No?
Not really. It was just everything before that I had questions for.
Okay. Titus and his team reach Leuz, where it is revealed that Demirium is a Necron tomb world, which, for you guys don't know, that the Necrons are another form of Xenos, and it's just bad Xenos juju technology, but they're not really relevant. It's just interesting because when I played the game and you don't know what that is, you're like, oh, this is cool, I guess. But when you know the lore, and you're like, oh shit, it's a Necron tomb world. That's crazy. Anyways,
Like
so
Space Marine 1 stuff.
no, it's not Space Marine 1 stuff. It's relevant because Necrons, you don't really know which worlds are Necron tomb worlds, and finding one, it's just like, oh shit, Necrons, which I'll admit, for a person who's been playing this for a year, everyone's been looking forward to maybe them like adding Necrons as like a fightable faction, but it never happened, and I don't think it's going to. Maybe in the next game, but not right now. It's just fun because they have a difference in archaeology, and it's just cool being in a Necron tomb world because you know that the Mechanicus is fucking with some ancient super far advanced alien technology, and you're like, please stop touching things. But anyways, it was revealed that Demir is a Necron tomb world. Leus is there with a seemingly functioning Aurora weapon, as he has immobilized the Thousand Suns and banishes Amura back to the warp after his psyker abilities fail to pierce Aurora's defenses. But this was a ruse, as after Leus seems to fully activate the device, Amura returns and reveal that has been manipulating Leus this entire time, and the Aurora now amplifies warp energy instead of suppressing it. This allows the Thousand Suns and Zeech demons to invade through huge warp portals and leads to the Ultramarines trying to take a stand and fend them off, to the point where even Chapter Master Calgar shows up with reinforcements to help destroy the traitors. Any questions?
Is there a reason why the Aurora doesn't kill them anymore and just makes them stronger?
So remember what I just said. Basically, Aurora, the thing itself is a power source. How it is used is different. Basically, what happened, Imura used his psyker powers to essentially almost possess Leus and basically implanted ideas that he thought was going to destroy the Thousand Suns, but instead it was actually powering them up. Like that whole sequence where Imura tries to destroy the barrier and seemingly fails and is banished back to the warp. He was just faking all of that to make them think that it was working. So he would actually turn the thing on, which he thought was going to permanently banish them, just made the warp that much more focused into reality in this location, which actually powered them up. So he was just manipulating him the entire time.
Okay,
that makes sense?
So he was manipulating him to make the machine into an empowering weapon, or
yes.
Okay, I thought it was like it only affected them once, so like now they, I don't know, like use some magic to have so it would have a positive effect on them instead over like the centuries of fighting.
Yeah, no, he was tricking them. Yes, it was working on them, but then remember, he had to pretend he was being weakened and beaten while it was in that position, but it flipping the polarity caused it from suppressing chaos to enhancing chaos energy, warp energy. So that's what he was going for. It was all a ruse.
Okay.
Is that when they're turning over the obelisk thingies?
Yes, that is exactly what that is.
Okay, so he's just like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it does. We literally played this like 2 nights ago, and he's like, no, I'm defeated, except I'm not. Someone call an ambulance, but not for me.
Yeah.
So the situation seemingly hopeless. Gadriel reasons that if they can flip the several obelisks that power Aurora, they can then close off the portals. The Ultramarines form up with Calgar in a huge push to take the obelisks and revert the power. During the push to the last obelisk, Titus's team and Calgar attack Amura as he tries to retreat into a small pocket dimension with the obelisk. Titus's team and Calgar fight and defeat Amura and his Lord of Change, which is the giant bird demon, and Titus destroys the last obelisk. The threat finally quelled, Titus is told by Calgar he has a new assignment that will take him away from here. Titus says goodbye to Gadriel and Chiron, who says he restored his faith in brotherhood. But as Titus goes aboard the ship, he is confronted by the chaplain one last time as he claims Titus may have proven himself to himself and his brothers, but the air of suspicion will never truly fade. It is then revealed the chaplain is Leandros, and to any, like, this whole reveal literally means nothing to anyone who just played this game. So remember I previously said that there was a squad mate who tattled on Titus back in the first game, which basically led to him being tortured for 100 years? That's this guy. So Leandros... I
was wondering why he was a dick the entire time.
Yeah, so Leandros, he was a squad mate of Titus in the first game, but he's a fucking pull up his ass, follow the Codex Astartes. Titus keeps going against it, but he gets the job done, and he's like, you know what, fuck you, I'm tattling on you to the Inquisition. And now he's a chaplain, which essentially is that role but personified tenfold, so he actually has authority. But yeah, that, like I said, that reveal means nothing to anyone who doesn't know the first game. But yeah, that's this dude. So yeah, this guy is responsible for Titus being tortured for 100 years, so he's not happy about this. But that is how the game ends. So is there any last questions about the story? Now, my question, does that make the story make more sense, Corey, about what exactly you did?
A little bit. I mean, it's kind of more simplified plot, I suppose. It's just because of the terminology and all the different like sects of people and things like that. Like if you're not fully integrated with like the lore of Warhammer, the naming conventions and stuff can be like a really overwhelming, I guess, to kind of wrap your head around what's going on. But
that's what I was trying to point out. So I wanted you, if you don't understand something, please ask. If you don't understand a terminology, ask me.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, like, in general, like looking at it like from a 1,000-foot view. So like walking through the story like this was, I think it's very helpful, not just for me, but I guess for anybody else that might be listening or is going to play through it and experience it and haven't like touched Warhammer ever. It's just kind of like, don't let the overwhelming backlog of lore kind of get in the way of the experience that you're going to have on this game.
And I don't think it stops a lot of people because the aesthetic just brings them all in.
I do have a question. It was like, when it happened, I was confused on what it was. When they were following the sorcerer into that void after they were like trying to fight the bird god, they were all like pushed back and put into like slow motion. The thing that was glowing on the back of the captain's like backpack, it was like a symbol, and it was glowing, and it was keeping him from being affected by the spell. What was that exactly? Was it like a Jesus take the wheel situation, or was that just like some kind of warp preventing?
So you remember how I said that having faith in the Emperor sometimes endows people with certain powers? That basically chapter masters, as I said before, there's only one person, at least I believe, that's above the chapter master, which is the Primarch, which is directly a son of the Emperor called Rabute Gilliman. He doesn't have anything to do with this game, but my point is, Calgar was in charge of the Ultramarines before Gilliman came back, and that's just let that slide. I'm not getting into that whole story. So he's second to nobody, and the higher up you are, the better gear you have, and that kind of symbol is basically like a relic, a holy relic that can invoke. When they say the Emperor protects, they mean that very literally. If you really believe in the Emperor and you really need help, sometimes you will be bestowed with like quote unquote like religious power of the Emperor, which is why he was protected from it.
So it's like that. That's why they still follow the Emperor, because stuff like that happens regardless of the fact that the Emperor is still like dead on the throne and barely speaks. There's still like miracles that come from him like that, which is why they still believe.
Miracles come from him. Very few individuals can still communicate with him in very broken up and hard to interpret ways. And because he sits on the golden throne and how he used to do, he serves as basically a beacon to people when they travel through the warp. Basically picture him as like a great lighthouse or like star in the sky that everyone uses as like a guiding point when they're going throughout the universe. So he is actively powering it. But whether or not he is alive still is kind of the question, because when you learn more about the Emperor, and of course you don't get any real solid evidence on him because he's supposed to be like this unknowable entity who's been alive for like millions of years. He is a god, So he just does what gods do and just divine intervention and shit like that. So yeah, that's essentially what that was.
I was a little confused at that point because it's just like they're like heavy military. They don't like the sorcerers, but they still have quote magic of their own. So I was confused. Like you hate them for having magic, but then you hypocrites have some of your own. So I guess it's not the same.
Hello, welcome to the 40k lore universe, Edwin. The Imperium is like 90% hypocrisy, but it's not as bad as it was in 30k. Like they hate the traitors for being traitors, not because they have psychic powers, because plenty of space marines called librarians, they are psychers as well. They have like the Imperium uses psychers all the time. What are you laughing at?
I'm just the name, like the buildup of that statement. You're like, and they're called librarians, and I'm just.
Well, some of them have. It depends on what chapter you're talking about. The broad term is librarians, but you have some like the White Scars who call them the Stormbringers, or the Space Wolves who are called Wolf Priests. Like they all are psychers, they all are librarians, but some of them have unique names and stuff depending on which chapter they're a part of. And they have their own warp powers. It's just that basically most of Thousand Sons are psychers, where like psychic abilities only manifest one in every like couple tens of thousands of people. So they're not very well, they're common in terms of how much population there is in this setting, but like they don't hate psychic powers because they actually are reliant on psychic powers for like faster than light travel. It's just that they hate them for being traitors. The Thousand Sons are the reason why the Imperium part of the reason the Imperium so fucked up as today as it was. They just also really, really, really like magic. So that's the story. I know if I went into every single terminology no one understood, we'd be here all fucking day, and this would just turn into a Warhammer 40k lorecast. So I guess I'm kind of glad you guys didn't ask every single possible thing to make everything possible thing make sense. But we're going to start talking about the actual gameplay now. So moving into the gameplay section. We'll start with the basics. This game has both melee combat and third-person shooter combat. Really basic question. How did you guys feel the combat felt? Both melee and shooting stuff. Did both feel good? Did you like doing one more than the other? Like, how did it feel?
It was a nice balance between the two, considering that they do provide you with like multiple melee weapons rather than it just being like a chainsaw, gun, like Gears of War, or just like pistol whipping. You actually get like a power sword or a combat knife or this chainsaw blade or the big hammer thing, which I was using the thunder hammer or something like that. I just felt like the crowd control for the melee was really fun because you're just wading through like tons of little dipshits and you're just like water ballooning them all over the place. When it comes to like the throwaway, what is that?
Minions, creeps, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, here comes all the goat men, and I'm just swinging this hammer around, blasting everybody everywhere. And it was super cool to use the jetpack, but the guns were all kind of fun. I tried to use a little bit of every one of them. Some I didn't really feel too different, like the heavy bolter and some other ones, like those kind of feel like not as differentiated, I guess, with like play style, but like the flamethrower and the grenade launcher and sniper rifle, they're going to function like they typically do in a lot of games, but they're still really fun to use. So the balance of like shooting and running in, screaming and slamming hammers and swords down was surprisingly fun because I kind of was expecting it to be primarily just shoot and dodge roll. I think they did a great job. And the combat and stuff is so fast and the controls are so responsive that like it handles the chaos of like what's happening on screen so well.
Yeah, the gameplay was really fun. It's just like very chaotic and just like really awesome. Just like being a giant tank just walking forward. I was like, I sometimes just like switch to my single hand gun and then just have my melee weapon in the other hand and then just do like an aura walk because it's like it just looks like it just looks cool. Yeah, I like the melee weapons, just using them more because it's just satisfying just to cut through everything. The guns, it was a little underwhelming. I didn't go anywhere past the campaign. Well, I guess neither Corey or I did. It's probably like better on that side to make this statement, but and during the campaign, there's like not much in weapon variety, mainly the regular guns and the plasma guns. I was like, I didn't really use the plasma guns all that much because they just ran out of bullets so quickly. And then most of the guns that I end up fighting, it don't really do all that much except for the one with a grenade attachment that I never knew how to reload. But it's like there's like the flamethrower, which to me barely did shit, like most flamethrowers in games, and the sniper rifle, and I forgot what, I think you were using it near the end, Udon. I don't know what it was. It was like a force gun, something like that.
It's like the other sniper rifle, the last fusel.
I don't know. I never seen that one. I just saw you using it.
Oh, are you talking about like the big,
it's like a shotgun.
the melt-a-gun?
Yeah, that thing is cool as fuck. You just point it at stuff and that goes away.
I didn't know what that was, and I didn't use it at all. So it's like I forgot about that. But
that
like,
one was fun.
That's the melt-a-weaponry. Just you point it at something and it ceases to be there anymore. That's melt-a-weaponry.
Yeah. I think that's also not a main equipable weapon. I think that's like a carry weapon. If you change, you'll drop it on the ground. So it's just a limited use because I think it comes with like 12 rounds. But yeah, that gun was really fun to use. And then any level that had the jetpacks in it, like paired with that playstyle, was really fun. Something for me, I guess, it's just a skill issue thing. I'm playing a lot of different third person like action games currently. And so every time I got into our Warhammer sessions, the dodge button is not circle. And so I kept throwing grenades every time I thought I was going to dodge, just waste all my grenades all the time.
Yeah, that happened to me once when I took a break and started playing other shit and I came back. I kept throwing grenades because I was trying to do something else. Now, it's funny that you both picked up on this because I picked up on it when I was first playing. It was one of my complaints I had with the game. Melee weapons are pretty varied, but however, it does feel like a lot of the ranged guns, outside of a few exceptions, are really samey and boring. And here's the thing. Lore-wise, it makes sense because the bolt gun, which is your main gun, basically half of the fucking the roster is the bolt gun and a bunch of different variations of the bolt gun. But the bolt gun is supposed to be customizable like that. However, lore-wise, there's a ton of weapons we are not getting to play with. And I'm not even pulling from the lore because there's also this fun boomer shooter called Bolt Gun. That game lets you play with more weaponry than this one. That's not just your titular bolt gun. It has plenty of weapons you can play with, like the shotgun or the straight-up grenade launcher and all this other crap. The operations mode actually has more weapons for you to use because not only do you have the rifle melt-a-gun, you can actually get a pocket pistol melt-a-gun. You can have the power axe, which is not in the campaign. And there's stuff like in the lore, like a chain fist or the thunder claws, like these kinds of stuff we don't see in the game. Like there's plenty of guns that we didn't have a chance to use. And they just overloaded the game with bolt weapons. And they have slowly added more weapons specifically to the operations and the PvP mode. I'm kind of sad to say. I thought they added them to the campaign, but the more we played it, the more I realized they didn't. That aren't bolt guns, so it's nice. But yeah, the weapon variety could have used a little bit of work. That being said, the weapons are still very fun to use. Now, when it comes to like the actual mechanics of fighting, ironically, you say you played like Souls-like and stuff. This game takes a lot from what I would consider Bloodborne, because the mechanic in Bloodborne that a lot of people liked was the fact when you got hit, if you kept hitting the enemy, you would get health back. And that's exactly what happens in this game. When you get hit, it turns into contested health. And if you either shoot or melee something, you will get that health back before it runs out. So you can actually get refunds if you play aggressively. Now, it's not a game, especially in operations mode, playing on the hard difficulties. You can't just fucking face roll everything. You know, when we were playing the campaign, I was, because I'm used to playing this game on the hardest difficulty. But learning how to parry and how to dodge, which will get you gun strikes, which gets your armor back, which is also another thing I kind of like about the 40k setting. Very few things have like personal shield generators. Everything's just armor on armor, which is fun. More ballistics. But the gun strikes are really fun because they'll help you recharge your armor. They look cool. They do damage to an enemy. So you're heavily incentivized to parry or dodge last second to get these gun strikes, which when I say a gun strike, you parry an enemy's move or dodge at the last second. You get a gun strike, which has your character pulling out their pistol or sidearm or whatever they have, shooting the enemy in the head, doing a decent amount of damage, staggering them, giving you a chance to shoot or melee them. And if they die from it, you get armor back, which is basically your quote unquote shields. They service the same thing as shields do. So that's really fun. The other fun thing of the game are the executions. Did you guys like the executions?
Oh yeah. I mean, not even just the executions, but the part where you can do the like dynamic camera and shoot them in the head from whatever because they're stunned. Like that always felt
That's
awesome.
the gun. That's the gun strike. That's what I just said.
Yeah, the gun strike was cool, and the executions they're pretty varied depending on the enemies you're playing against. But it's pretty funny when you're just like you're running towards an enemy flashing red, and it's almost a race to see which one of us is going to kill it. It's kind of like it just makes that part fun, right? And it's the same thing that Doom Eternal had, right? Is the glory kills.
Yeah, that's like the only thing I can think of, but it's a little bit not as insane. Like the more insane ones are for like the bosses. Like one of my favorites for Space Marine is like when an enemy is about to jump onto you, you just chainsaw it in the middle of the air. And it's just like I was like, oh, that was satisfying, you douche, for trying to jump on me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, the parries that you get when you're like, oh, someone's going to catch one.
It's even in the operations mode, you get access to the power fist, which you can just catch them in your giant hand and crush them as they jump towards you. It's awesome.
Nice.
The way that they balance like that feeling too, because there's a guy that you can execute, but you're also surrounded by like 100 people at once, and you're just wading through fighting all this stuff, and it just blends so well to be like, and then going from that back into the chaos, like there isn't any stopping. It's just constant action, which is welcome because of the way that the pacing works. Is like, here's a bunch of shit that happens, and then here's the part where the characters are going to talk to each other for a minute, and then you go back to just like full dialed up to 11 shit that's happening, and it's complemented by whatever's going on in the background too. So it's just like a nice little like gamer brain type thing to be like, enemies flashing red, you know what that means.
Yeah, because using an execution, killing them like that will give you armor back, so it's beneficial. And even though there is a limited amount of execution animations, which it's fun because it's unique depending on what melee weapon you're using, it never really gets old, at least not in my case. I never get tired of them. Now, that being said, it's funny because when this game came out, people were really comparing it to a like harkening back to the 360 days of third-person shooter games, specifically Gears of War, because it obviously has that very samey feel of like action segment, talkie bit, action segment, talkie bit, action segment, talkie bit. And it's like, oh, there's something cool happening in the background. Press Y to look at it. It feels like Gears of War, and everyone loves Gears of War. So people were like really kind of, I think a lot of people were satisfied. It was like, here's the action bit, here's a cutscene, here's the action bit, here's a cutscene. Just the old-fashioned formula of how video games work. So people are just like, this feels like I've been playing this for years. I only just picked it up, sort of thing. Yeah, the combat is very, very satisfying. People always say with the Batman games, it makes you feel like Batman. You feel like a Space Marine, because when you're doing well in the combat, you feel like a fucking god. But at the same time, if you're not paying attention, you can and will get completely butt fucked if you're not doing the things right. So it's not just like, not like when you're playing Dynasty Warriors, that even if I wasn't mowing through all these people, I could just stand there and get stabbed, and it'd still take them probably like a solid 60 seconds to kill me. So I guess here's an important bit. So there's two different factions of enemies in the game. We have the Tyranids and we have the Chaos. Did you guys prefer fighting one or the other? Which one do you like fighting better? Do you feel like one felt like worse, and why? Like, how do you feel about the enemies you have to fight?
Probably Chaos was more fun to fight than the Tyranids.
Wow.
And I don't know, like,
It was fucking annoying.
The Tyranids are cool, and they're just kind of just mindless. There's Zerg, StarCraft Zerg. They're just running all over. You have a couple of them with guns and whatnot, but like I always liked the shooting enemies, and I think there's more, I guess, area coverage when you're fighting with the Chaos folks. Not the like goat guys, because that's basically the equivalent of the wormy dudes that are running up on you, but like the Chaos dudes that are in the back teleporting around and stuff. It kind of helps you kind of experience the battlefield more than just lizard brain things just rushing you. And I think, like, if I'm going to put it into like two different categories, it's like the Tyranids are fun to fight because there's so many of them, and you just feel like you're just mowing them down. But the Chaos ones are fun to fight because you have to approach them in a different way. I guess it's more situational.
It makes sense. I said really because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, disagree with you because I vastly prefer fighting Tyranids over my many hours of playing the game. But before I say anything, what about you, Edwin?
I'd much prefer fighting the Tyranids. So it's like fighting the Chaos is just like very annoying. The Goatmen, they have the shield, which like I don't know how the fuck that tiny little shield's gonna stop my giant thunder hammer coming at you right in your face. But like fighting the Chaos like possessed armor was also incredibly annoying because like I'm trying to like they take so many fucking bullets to bring down, and anytime I try and like reserve ammo and try to hit them with a hammer, they just teleport away, which is just really fucking annoying. And there's like so many of them spawn all at once. It was just really frustrating. Finding the Tyranids, they're like really fucking cool to fight, but it's like, I mean, they're easier to fight, but it's I just like seeing them because they just look cool. The fact that they also use guns, what I thought was surprising. I was like, bug people using guns. I didn't expect that, and I just get shot. But it says like a bug squishing quest when I fight them. I find it fun.
Yeah, so a lot of the community vastly prefers fighting Tyranids because I say it's like Gears of War, but in one ways it's not like Gears of War. This game does not have a cover system. This game is totally reliant on you being very aggressive because how you get health and armor back is by being aggressive and killing shit. That being said, when you're fighting the Tyranids, the Tyranids have a fun mechanic because they're a hive mind. When you kill a big Tyranid surrounded by a bunch of little Tyranids, you kill the big Tyranid, and because he's supposed to be like quote unquote mind controlling the little ones, when you kill the big one, a huge chunk of the little ones will just die. They'll just drop dead. So you're incentivized to ignore the little ones and go for the big one, which will kill a bunch more of them. That same mechanic does not exist for Chaos, which makes them much more annoying because you could go for the Chaos Marines, which are the more important threat, but even if you kill them, you're still surrounded by the goat people, which if you're ignoring them, they can and will do a fuck ton of damage and kill you. Not to mention the guardsmen or the cultists that, yes, die in one shot, but they have these awful sniper rifles that will do a fuck ton of damage to you if you don't dodge or if you just let them do what they want. Now, the problem with that being is that the gun strikes I was talking about earlier are much harder to do against the Chaos because you need to parry them, and you can't parry things at range. They have to melee you somehow, and sometimes they'll cover the distance, but most of the time they're just going to stand back there and shoot at you. I mean, that's one of your main sources of damage, of health gaining, of like advantage getting. Like it is the Chaos just in general offer you much less chances to interact with the main gameplay mechanics than the Tyranids do. Now, I don't hate them. I've grown to like got used to them and knowing you do change fighting. I do prefer having enemies you have to change tactics for, but having some kind of similar mechanic that would let you kill a bunch of those smaller enemies. And they even actually fix this a little bit because with the anniversary update they just did, they introduced a new enemy type, well, two new enemy types actually for the Chaos that you do not see in the campaign. One where you have a goat guy flying on a Beyblade essentially that will throw spears at you and also attack you like melee combat. They offer more instances to get gun strikes off. And they recently also added Chaos Beasts, which are basically just horrible, fucked up mutant like just monstrosities, but they're all melee. They will charge you. But because of that, you're getting more opportunities for gun strikes and dodges and stuff like that. And they're also as tough as the Chaos Marines. So they're like another like mid-tier term of like enemy, which you don't get it towards the campaign, which again, I wish we played a little bit of operations before this, but oh well, you can't have everything. But the point being is that Saber, the people behind this, did kind of acknowledge that because while they did introduce one new Tyranid enemy, they have introduced way more new Chaos stuff to like make it more interesting to fight than they have the Tyranids, because the Tyranids were much more perfect on release than they needed less tweaking after the fact. That being said, get rid of the fucking biovores.
The executions for the Chaos soldiers weren't as satisfying because there's no blood, and like most of the execution is just ripping their helmet off. But it's like there is one execution that I like specifically where it's like you grab their arms and just put your foot on their chest and pull their arms off. Every time I see it, I just think of Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z ripping off the arms of the android.
Oh yeah, you just basically are like blowing them up into glitter bombs.
Yeah, and I had the same thing. I mean, again, when I learned to appreciate the lore and what the Thousand Suns are, I don't have much of a bigger problem with it. When I was first playing, and I'm like, "Where's the blood? I want blood and gore. I want to kill shit. like this is boring. Why am I just ripping open confetti?"
It's just like fighting Tyranids. You're covered in blood, and then fighting the Chaos. You're just covered in glitter. It's like, well, like, oh, you're fighting space glitter Marines.
But yeah, and quite frankly, I would go more in depth on operations that adds more gameplay mechanics. But considering you all two didn't play that, we're not going to talk about that. But brief from me. Basically, if you like the main gameplay loop of the campaign, play operations. It has even more there, more weapons, more. Each class has its own super abilities you can use. Like it is a lot of fun, and I hope you two might try it in the future because it's really fun, and you might be able to you can customize your Marine and look into the chapters and stuff. You don't have to be a blueberry boy fucking Ultramarine.
I got lost in the menu trying to figure out how the hell to get back to the campaign, and I ended up just making my own Marine. It was like, oh, I thought I was making it for the campaign, but I guess not. So I'll get back to that.
I'm not going to speak on PvP. I only played it for like maybe an hour when the game first released. I don't really care for it, but it's because I just don't. It's not because the PvP is bad. I just don't play PvP games pretty much at all anymore. So I'm not going to comment on that. And from our show, from start to credits, anyways, mainly focuses on like the quote unquote main campaign, regardless, anyways. So that being said, I mean, that covers almost everything. That doesn't seem like a lot for gameplay, but the gameplay, like sandbox, as I've said many times, is very compact, but it's like it has in it what it needs to have. And the gameplay loop is so fun and satisfying. You play it over and over and over again. You don't get tired of it. It's just really satisfying to play. And if this is what people feel when they're playing Bloodborne, I get it. I don't get it when I'm playing Bloodborne. I get it when I'm playing this game, not Bloodborne. But that being said, I mean, like we talked a little bit about aesthetics. We keep praising the aesthetics and stuff. Music is all right. I mean, there's no standout tracks, but it just means that the music's doing its job. But that being said, like, does playing through this make you more interested in learning more about 40k, or possibly playing the game more, trying the operations mode, or if Space Marine 3 comes out, are you going to buy it? Like, does it make you more interested in the whole setting?
Oh, for sure. Space Marine 3, if that ever comes out, I'm definitely going to want to play it. The cross-platform aspect of the game makes it awesome because we could all play it together on different consoles. And I've always kind of been interested in 40k lore. There's just so much. And I know a little bit of things like the Eldar and the Necrons and stuff like that. It would be cool to kind of see them a little bit more, I guess, in one of these games, or because like I'm seeing the Tyranids and this chaos and stuff, and the game itself just looks so damn good, and I'm like, man, I want to see what those guys look like. That's kind of maybe they'll be in the next one, because if this is what this looks like now, like the next one's gonna be freaking awesome.
Yeah,
and 50k when.
Well, yeah, it's already confirmed. Which I usually open up with like when this game is released, but I want to do something lore-wise. Yeah, Saber Interactive made this game. They do a fantastic job to the point where I love this company now. Even though it's funny, they do like shit like they do like truck games a lot. So this is a really weird departure from their like normal catalog, but they did a really good job with it. This game came out last year, and it's already confirmed for a sequel. They are going to be making Space Marine 3. Because this was a huge success. I mean, the original one was a pretty good success, but like Space Marine 2 was a huge success, especially seeing all the new people that coming into it and be like, I don't know anything about 40k, but this shit's fucking awesome. Which is in general pretty much most people's reaction to this IP when I see people interacting with it the first time. And you know, it's fun now that I'm the person on the inside seeing more people interact with it the first time on the outside, being like, I was there once, and I hope you can be where I'm at and like get more into it, because there's so much here for everyone who likes this thing. Because it's one of the best things. Came out in the 80s. There is so much backlog of shit you can look into. My suggestion to anyone out there who's interested, and I mean, maybe someone has a better opinion than I do, who's like way more into the lore than I am, because even me, I'm probably considered a fledgling amongst people who are really into this hobby. But start with the Horus Heresy series, because that's where like the main meat of the setting is, like the main reason why the current day setting is at where it's at, and it does spoon feed it to you in a way I feel like is much more digestible to learn more about this setting. Start with the Horus Heresy books. You might not be able to find the physical books, but pretty much all of them are audiobooks on Audible or any other place. I mean, not every other place. Spotify doesn't have them. So Audible, I know for sure, has the Horus Heresy, and they have great narrators, great lore. I love it. I've been eating my way through the books, and I'm still getting there. Start there. Start with the Horus Heresy, because I feel like that's a pretty decent starting point. That being said, we'll move into final thoughts. So go ahead. Whoever wants to give your final thoughts and give a score for the game, go for it.
Overall, had a blast. I mean, video game wise, stepping outside of the lore, whether like if you love 40k, obviously you're going to enjoy this game. But for someone who doesn't know anything about 40k, I still love this game. Like it was so fun, and like visually and just the action sequences and everything. Like I would give it like a solid like 8. It's short, like campaign wise, but like you said, there's the operations mode that kind of give you a little bit more to chew on while you wait for other content, I suppose. I don't typically do like the endless runs of stuff, but like I would play this because I know like Resident Evil also has kind of like weird mini story mode thing after the fact. But yeah, this game is really dope. And even if you don't know anything about Warhammer, you're still going to be like having a kick-ass time.
Yeah, I don't know if I can give like an honest rating. I could probably say 8 out of 10 because I haven't done the operations either, so I'm missing like half of what the game is, or at least most of it. But it's like, I like the combat. It's really fun and satisfying to play the same way as Doom. It's fast paced. It plays like Gears of War, but I much more prefer the Space Marines over Gears of War. The aesthetics, the lore, and the way that everything is designed is really cool and just satisfying to just look around. I know Corey kept stopping like every scene just to look out at the horizon.
It's
just
cool,
to take
man.
everything in. Yeah. But it's like given an 8 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10, but that's I have to like play operations first. So like between 8 and 9. I really liked it.
I predict it'll go up to 9 once you play operations. I'll play it with you because, like I said, I've been playing this game ever since it came out. I've been playing this game for over a year. Is how replayable that operations mode is, at least to me, anyways. This more or less was my gateway drug into the hobby. I was always aware of it, but this is what really made me take the plunge into the lore. I want to like paint minis now. I want to keep consuming the books, and I'm so on board with other games because I also can't wait for like hopefully the next Dawn of War is good. It's not Dawn of War 3 because I have dabbled in Dawn of War 2, but we're not talking about that today. Which, by the way, Blood Ravens, Loyalist chapter, Iron Warriors, fucking Chaos chapter, and my favorite Xenos are Orcs. But yeah, I adore this game. I'm still playing it, still going to keep playing it. I honestly would probably give it a 9 out of 10. If nothing else. I know that seems like absurdly high, especially for other shit I've graded on this on our series. But I might be a little bit biased, but I just think a game that can bring so many people in that even have no idea what's going on and still come out of it being like, yeah, that was fucking awesome. Like that's a game doing something right. It's a game that does not overstay its welcome. It's a game that knows exactly what it wants to be, and it delivers exactly on what it promises. It doesn't add a bunch of bells and whistles. The only DLC that you have to pay for is cosmetics. It has added tons and tons of free update content post-launch. The only shit that you don't get without paying is just some cosmetics for operation. That's it. That's the only thing they ask for. And if cosmetics is as bad as it gets, then I'm fine with it. And they even add plenty of free cosmetics you get just by getting achievements and stuff, a la old-fashioned Halo. So I absolutely adore this game. I think because anyone and everyone can enjoy it. It's great, and I just hope anyone who likes it will actually look into it more, because I guarantee you there is a whole universe of stories and shit that you can get into that can occupy your time if you're looking for something to read or just a new hobby to get into. It's really, really cool. But yeah, so I think that about wraps it up for today. So I'm glad for everyone joining us on Space Marine 2 from start to credits. Oh, I promised this in the last Anime Book Club, but we are changing our schedule here at Mediocre Rumble Brothers. Basically, we're going to space out these episodes a little bit because, believe it or not, everyone here has a very, very full-time job on top of everything, and we kind of have to make space for other shit in our lives. So we're also trying to take this time to like improve the quality of these videos, like more editing and stuff for you, especially on the side of like Anime Book Club. So basically, we are going to have either an episode of Anime Book Club, have a space of 3 weeks, and then we're going to have our start to credits, have a space of 3 weeks, and then we're going to have Memory Card, which is our relatively new one, which we weren't sure if we were going to add, but considering that it seems that people like those episodes, we're going to keep doing it. So We'll have a memory card and then rotate back to Anime Book Club for after another 3 weeks. It'll be less content, but we hope that it's going to be more edited, more enjoyable to watch on YouTube and stuff. Which, speaking of, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to us on YouTube. It helps out a lot, and follow us on Spotify and Rumble. And with that, just remember to guys to keep exploring, keep playing, and keep listening. And this is Mediocre Rumble Brothers, and we'll catch you on our next episode.
Hey, this is Corey.
See you
Thanks
later.
for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we've mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.